All right, are you going to chase the storm or are you going to wait for the rain to fall to you? The new movie Twister came out. It's a remake of one that was done like 20 years ago. Pretty good show, but it made me think of an analogy of how you find properties. I get calls all the time. People are always asking me, especially new investors, where do you find deals? I think there's two main philosophies or ways you go about finding deals with a little bit of overlap in between the two. And, go back to my analogy of chasing the storm. Are you going to be proactive? Are you going to go after the leads? Are you going to go after the sellers? Are you going to go after the storm? Or are you going to be a little bit more passive and reactive and just wait for the rain to start falling? So you can kind of get fed with the deals that you want. So let's first talk about being proactive. When I think about being proactive and finding deals, think of the wholesalers that have really come on the scene and become super efficient and, deal machines making it rain for all these investors over the last 5 or 6 years. They're proactive. They are spending a ton of money going direct to seller. They're cultivating lists of out-of-state owner, distressed sellers. They're sending mailers. They're door knocking. They have teams of cold call people that are calling homeowners. They're dropping text messages. They're doing voicemail drops. They're setting up websites to collect leads that ultimately then are called on. That is very proactive. Like, you are putting forth a huge effort as far as time and money and commitment to find those distressed sellers and those leads. And then what do? They tee them up and they kind of release the rain cloud, right? And drop the rain on the investors that are kind of just waiting there sitting for deals to fall. And that's where I think you can also be reactive and do really well. Being reactive to me is responding to and getting on. Now, you're reactive. There's a fair amount of being proactive in all of this, but not quite to the level of like what a wholesaler would be doing or going direct to seller. Being reactive to me means finding deals by networking with wholesalers and getting on their email list. And if you're on every email list from wholesalers, at least in Utah, you're going to get, depending on the week and the day, 3 to 10 opportunities that could be deals. And that, all you have to do is look at your email and then evaluate the deal and then go to the property. You do not have to negotiate that deal with the seller. You just have to negotiate and outbid or win the bid from other investors that the wholesaler is sending them to. So that's reactive. The MLS is gold. I bet you, of all the flips that I've done that are along with other partners, I bet you 75 to 80% of all the 400 plus flips I've done came from finding them on the MLS. It sometimes gets harder to find things on the MLS, but if you dedicate to just one strategy, whether it's being direct to seller or responding to wholesalers or the MLS, you are going to find deals. Now, the really good flippers maybe have a little mix of everything going on, and they're probably the ones that have the most deal flow. So the MLS is a source of gold for deals. You just got to stick with it. And like everything that we talk about, you got to have a system and process way of doing it. Other reactive ways, I think, that are easy, that you don't have to put forth too much effort. I found a lot of deals like on Facebook groups. And then just by being active in that group and asking and telling people what you're looking for. Obviously, classifieds like locally KSL, there's going to be a deal. Trustee sales, I'd say those are reactive because they're publicly posted. You know that the seller is selling because they're forced to sell because it's going to the courthouse to be sold. So trustee sales, tax sales, estate sales, all those kind of things where somebody already has a relationship, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. Like a voluntary relationship with a seller would be like a wholesaler or an MLS listing. Someone's representing the seller or already has a relationship with the seller, and then you then have a relationship with that person. The proactive way is that seller, you're direct to them. And like we talked about, there's many ways where where you can be direct to the seller via, mailers and everything we just talked about. Now, there is a way where I think those two worlds merge, and this is the other area where I found also probably the other 20 to 25% of the deals that I've bought. It's networking. Networking, there's a component of you have to be proactive. You have to go out there and talk to people. You have to go to the meetups. You have to make phone calls, but it's also reactive, because the more that you do that and network with people, the more that you're going to get those random calls that come and say, hey, Matt, here's a deal. Would you like to do it? I can think of one example right now. It's an awesome property in Salt Lake, and it came from networking, where it's a borrower of mine. We've done business before. I've even referred deals to him. He had one that he didn't want to do. And in the moment, all I had to do was answer a phone call and say, yes, I want that deal. But the reality is there was a ton of proactive back and forth work before that to kind of create that relationship. So if it's helpful, think of that analogy of, the movie Twister. Are you chasing the storm, or are you just waiting for the deals to fall so you can react to them, with the analogy being rain? Now, with all that being said, you still have to be able to do your due diligence really quick. You have to be able to analyze deals. You got to make sure you have your money lined up, because, like I've said in other videos, money loves speed. If you're not able to commit to a good deal quick, you may not get it. And in order to commit to a good deal quick, you've got to make sure you have the deal evaluation done, the money ready to go, and the ability to make a decision quickly. Now, where are you going to find the best deal? I don't know if any of these areas that we talked about is better or worse for finding the best deal, because it all comes down to how well you negotiate. Some of it's timing, but in general, I would say the closer you are to the seller, the better deal you're going to get. So the closer you are to a direct relationship with the seller, you're probably going to get the best deal. And why is that? Because you're probably the only competition you're competing with. The expectation of the seller and your expectation of price. Think of the wholesale deals that have come over the years, especially during COVID. That wholesaler cemented a relationship with the seller and locked in a price. That price was not competing. Maybe they're competing against other wholesalers, but they're not competing against 1,000 people on their buyer's list. And how many times have you seen a wholesaler contract get assigned or marked up for 15, 20, 30, 40? The biggest one I ever saw, and there's probably been ones bigger than this, was like $250,000 that a buyer bought from a wholesaler, and their assignment fee was $250,000. That's a huge spread. And the reason that the end buyer, the investor, paid $250,000 more than what the wholesaler was paying is because they were just that far removed from the seller. Now, all of this comes down to your ability to negotiate, your follow-up, your persistence, all that kind of stuff. But that's a good rule of thumb. The closer you are to the seller, the better deal you're going to get. The further away from the seller, the less likely you're going to get a good deal, because there's going to be more competition hunting for that same deal, like you see with wholesalers or even on the MLS. The MLS, there's 7,000, 8,000 agents and that many more buyers that might be looking at it. So remember, you're going to be proactive or reactive. There's pros and cons to both. The cons to being proactive is you got to commit and spend a lot of money on that marketing, and you got to have a team, and you just got to grind and get that system in place to find those deals and commit to it. And it can be very profitable. The cons to being a reactive strategy is you're competing with a lot more people, but you're also basically not really having any marketing. It's just sweat equity to go chase the deals. So hopefully this helps. And inside of all those strategies, you could go a mile deep on the best practices on how to do that. We'll try to do some more videos on maybe our best practices for writing offers on the MLS. And so go find your tornado or sit back and wait for the rain to come.